Welcome to Tales from the Bridge. Today, BH Panhuyzen is on the show. We're very happy to have him join us on the bridge. Next episode, we are talking about the Expanse book series and a little bit about the TV show, so join us for that one. And we've got lots of other interviews coming your way. Remember, if you haven't left us a review and you've been listening for a while, please do it. Tell a friend. It really helps us out. All right, let's make our way over to the bridge. Today we have Brian Panhuyzen on the show, who writes under the name BH Panhuyzen, and he writes literary and science fiction, and has published a collection of short stories and several novels. He writes for the stage and television, including work for the Just for Laughs International Comedy Festival, and he's penned and performed his own stand-up comedy. He has in the past worked as a small press publisher, book designer, typesetter, editor, and most recently created and maintains PubGizmo, a low-cost software system for indie publishers, with subscribers across Canada and the United States. Brian lives in Toronto, soon to relocate to Vancouver, with his wife Lex, a psychotherapist, 2 kids, a dog, and an aging but still feisty black cat. We only speak to authors with cats. If you don't have a cat, you can't be on the show.
Okay.
So it's a rule.
Yeah.
Yep. It almost seems like that. How are you doing, Brian?
I'm pretty good. I'm good. I just had a nice sushi dinner with my kids, and I'm had a busy day, but I'm just really happy to be here.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We're happy to have you. I heard about your book last year, and the concept immediately was extremely intriguing. So for our listeners, we definitely have to talk about A Tidy Armageddon, which is Brian's book. So can you just tell our listeners about the book, the concept, and a bit of the story?
Sure. The concept covers a group of soldiers who are Canadian soldiers, and they are asked to sequester themselves in a bunker in the prairies. And they're in there for about 3 weeks, and they have no real information, and they're waiting for somebody to come and tell them that it's all clear and that they can come out, and that doesn't happen, and so they have to effect an escape from this bunker, and they immediately find themselves still in the same location, somewhere near Shiloh, which is a few hundred kilometers west of Winnipeg. And they are among all of the products of human creation, and they are all stacked into homogeneous towers of everything. So you'll have a tower of blenders and cans of peas and helicopters and jars of perfume. All of them are about 90 feet tall, and there is no apparent reason or clarity on how this could all have come about. And yet they find themselves in this situation where they have to navigate this kind of maze, because there is space between all of these blocks, and attempt to find out what happened to all the people who are not present, and what exactly has happened to the world. And there's 8 soldiers, or a mixed bag of misfits and diverse characters, and they have to kind of learn to get along as they navigate this weird landscape that they've encountered. And that's just the basic concept.
Right away when reading it, you see the towers, and you learn what makes up these towers. You know what this story is going to be about. And one of the strongest themes here is, well, anti-consumerism. Can you tell us a bit about anti-consumerism? I mean, we all know about consumerism, and probably many of us know that we do too much of it. So where did that idea come from, and where are you in the real world with consumerism?
It's an interesting idea in that a lot of the sort of eco-fiction these days is more about climate change, as if really that's the only problem that we face right now. This is not necessarily a deliberate choice that I made to, try to tackle something other than climate change from that perspective. The idea came to me probably about 20 or 25 years ago. It took me a long time to get to writing this story because it was very complicated, and I didn't think I really had the chops when I was younger and hadn't really written much. I hadn't written a novel yet. I was just writing short stories. I tried to write it a few times as a short story, and had a lot of false starts. But the idea for me was always that if we could just see what the scale of our consumption looks like in a concentrated way, we would have a much better understanding of what the impact of that is. And if you consider something like, one or two little bunny rabbits are cute, but if you have 10 million bunny rabbits, coming at you, it's a whole different perspective. You get a very different feeling when something is displayed in volume. There's a lot more menace to it, even the most sort of innocuous thing. So the story came from a need to concentrate our consumption in a certain way, and it's an interesting idea because I've sort of explored it in some of my other books, just in kind of conversation where people have talked about things like there's a character in one of my other novels, a literary novel, where he's looking at the ceiling of a motel and he's looking at the nails in the ceiling and he considers like how many nails are there in the world. So it's a thing that's kind of hung with me. It's like how many of that in the world. And part of it was part of the joy and the fun of writing the book was trying to find out, how much of this particular thing was made, because I did a lot of research. And then I computed kind of how much space it would take up. So when the characters walk past an object, stacked into a configuration, the distance that they cover on one side of it is approximately what it would be according to my calculations. So it's a kind of a realistic picture of the scale of things were we to concentrate them in that way.
And you do paint that picture quite clearly, right? Like you describe in detail what the scale and the size of what these products would look like if they were stacked 90 feet high into the distance and in a giant wall, right? And
Right.
it paints it's a little bit of a claustrophobic feeling too of the protagonists being inside of these walls, surrounded, and the imagery of all of the consumer goods around the world is not something that somebody would typically think about. So you bringing it out in a literary way is actually, I think, really unique. I found that quite compelling.
Oh, well, thanks. Yeah, there were a lot of challenges in it, and I know there's been some criticism, I guess, on maybe the lists in the book because it is a bit list heavy. It's a bit of a hefty book because of that. But that was kind of a deliberate choice that was made because it's meant to convey, what that scale is like. There's a lot of stuff, and so sometimes I would put in a list of 15 or 20 product names of something that they're seeing stacked up. And I know it's a bit of a slog to get through. I mean, it's optional. You don't have to read those, but that's there for a reason. And that's, because art isn't necessarily supposed to be easy all the time. Sometimes to make it a little bit difficult and challenging helps convey a message.
Yeah, and I certainly wouldn't describe it as a slog, Brian. Not at all.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you. I
yeah,
appreciate that.
yeah.
I looked at too many Goodreads reviews, I guess.
Oh,
That's a
yeah.
fatal.
Yeah.
I stopped doing that a few months ago. It just wasn't good for my mental health.
No, okay.
The fact is, you've accomplished it. You've well, when I read it, I was thinking, well, shit, I have a blender. Like, am I a part of the problem?
I
And
have
that's
two,
what.
Tristan.
See, there we go. But that's what science. That's why I read science fiction, is because I want to self-reflect, right? I want to see something in the book I'm reading, and I want to take something from it. So you've done that. So even if it is a bit of a slog for some people to get through, that's the point. I mean, you should feel a little bit. I mean, well, I guess that's kind of a question. Should we be feeling a little bit guilty for our consumption? I mean, I don't want to say give us a prediction of the future, but maybe a little bit. Where's this going in the future? Are we going too far?
Yeah, I mean, I think we are. I have actually a question for you. Is that has it maybe not directly changed your behavior, but has it made you think a bit more when you're walking through a store or something like that, or considering a purchase or something? Has it had any impact on those decisions that you might make?
100%. Yeah.
Okay, mission accomplished. Right?
Yeah, same with me. Same with me, Brian. It's just I mean, I don't know that it has changed my behavior at present, but it certainly has made me look around and say, huh, And I've always been fairly conscious of consumption. But yeah, I mean, visualizing it in that way is a really unique way to think about it.
Yeah, and so I guess the question is, where are we going? I mean, we are consistently, producing more and more stuff all the time. Um, Although, I mean, I have to say, I have two kids. They're adults or very young adults right now, and I was considering kind of they're a little bit difficult to buy gifts for, and they're actually not really that interested in earning money because they're not that keen on buying things, which I don't know if that's just my kids or if that's an experience that other parents have had with their children. I mean, it makes me feel a bit hopeful. Uh, they're really just interested in what the next video game is. They're really into gaming and they read a lot, so there's books as well. But in terms of their desire to actually go out and take home physical objects, they're actually not into it the way I think that I was as a child. So again, I don't know if how good they are as a sample for what the rest of they're pretty unique kids.
It's pretty typical, I think, Ryan. My son is certainly like that, definitely.
Yeah,
It's all about the
yeah.
video games, less about the stuff.
Yeah, yeah, and those, of course, they occupy only space on a disk. It's just data as well, which I'm finding is useful as well. Like I'm in the process of getting ready for this move, and so I have a lot of stuff that I want to get rid of because they charge you for a long haul by the pound, and so and I think the mover that I had a quote from was about $1.13 a pound. So that really puts things into perspective. If you got a set of porcelain bowls that you never use. You could just weigh them and figure out how much they're going to cost to transport. I mean, maybe everybody should be in this position. It's just to be surcharged for the mass of the goods that you have every few years to keep you paring your stuff down. So it's an interesting place to be, just trying to make these decisions. So one thing I've realized is sometimes there's an object that I have that has an emotional connection or something like that, and I'll just take a photo of it, and then there's a digital image that I can look at, and maybe not quite the same effect as holding it in my hand, but I think it works as a substitute.
This experience has kind of made you a bit of a minimalist then, being charged by the pound. It
Yes.
makes you,
Yeah. So when we're all gonna, walk up the ramp to the space ark or something like that, I think it's gonna do it to all of us, that the little that we can take if we were to be, going to another planet.
Ever wondered what it takes to make it in the movie business? Peel back the curtain with 4-6 Success Filmmaking. 4-6 Success Filmmaking is where filmmakers share their stories and the secrets.
It's beyond competitive out there.
There have been movies that it's taken me 10 years to get made.
Don't wait to create. Like, you've got to just keep making stuff.
Tune in to 4-6 Success Filmmaking for your dose of cinematic realness, direct from the voices that have lived it.
so this story, A Tiny Armageddon, obviously from the title, is a post-apocalyptic story. Why is it that so many people are interested in post-apocalyptic stories, do you think? Is it, sometimes I relate it to horror movies, like we watch horror movies because we know we'll likely never experience that, so it makes us feel better and it's a bit of a thrill. Is it the same reason?
Yeah, that's a really good question because I really love post-apocalyptic, movies and books and everything like that. And why? Like, why do we want to see? I mean, there is kind of a joy which, we still have from childhood watching, Godzilla films. There's something really fun about seeing things get destroyed. So from that perspective, of that kind of, I guess there are, there's so many flavors of apocalypse, from that perspective, monsters, kaiju, and the meteor, destroying things, and then there's zombies and things like that. So maybe, it would be a generalization just to say have one answer for why we are into that kind of thing. From my perspective, There's an interesting question in this book, and that's kind of which team are you on? Like, are you on team humanity or are you on team Earth? Because the book is quite a optimistic story if you are talking from the perspective of nature and from the earth and from animals. And the characters do refer in one point to, humanity being this kind of brief but annoying parasite that, kind of wreaked havoc on the earth. And then suddenly they're gone, which is a positive, a net positive if you're on that team. Of course, it's terrible for humanity or whatever happened to humanity. So, I mean, I wonder if in a way some post-apocalyptic fiction, like if you imagine zombies or something like that, I'm thinking of The Walking Dead or some show like that, is that you see the world kind of being reclaimed from the force of humans, and maybe we have. Some of us do have, we're self-conscious about what our existence means for the other creatures on the planet and on the quality of life for them as well. I guess there's that perspective. I don't, you sent me that question in an email, and I've been thinking about it, but I haven't really come up with a sort of better response as to why we find that so compelling to see what happens when things go completely awry. It's still a thing that I'm going to think about, and I don't know. Do you guys have your own theories? I mean,
Well, I was going to ask, like, what about from an author's perspective? Because does it provide you as an author literary devices for your characters? Because your characters no longer have a social safety net. They no longer have society. They're really on their own. So it creates this sense of isolation in the characters. So I can imagine as an author, that creates all sorts of opportunities for conflict and intrigue, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's a really good point. It does because everything is a challenge, and there's nothing more interested than, watching someone try to solve a problem. I mean, that was the whole pleasure of, The Martian was, seeing somebody in a completely looks like a hopeless predicament, and what kind of ingenuity do they bring to solving that problem? So an apocalypse, of course, is an excellent vehicle for that kind of thing. Also to consider when you're watching something like, say, a zombie movie or something, you're watching the characters interact in a way, and you're asking yourself, what would I do in that situation? How am I going to make better decisions than those characters? It's the same thing in horror films, as you say. You're slapping your forehead when the character decides to go down to the basement and investigate the noise, and you yourself are living that moment, and maybe there's a bit of a dopamine hit, and realizing that you wouldn't make that same poor decision in that situation. So yeah, I think you're onto something in terms of at least from the creative point of view of writing around an apocalypse.
It also kind of gives the opportunity to democratize characters. You can have a real powerful person before the apocalypse who's kind of brought down. Everybody's at the same level post-apocalypse.
True.
Pretty
True.
much, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
you can have characters who were disempowered suddenly become powered or whatever.
Right. It's a complete shakeup of
Yeah.
of the hierarchy as well. Yeah. And I think the characters in the book, they fantasize about coming across the Walmart family or something like that, and now that they have nothing, that they have been brought down to the same level. So yeah. So I guess the characters have been considering that as well.
So if I could just I'm gonna ask about Tiny Armageddon, and it was the Toronto Star talked about it being one of the 5 best science fiction books of 2023. Um, what was that all about? Did you hear about that coming, or did you find it out along with
No, it
everybody else?
was, first thing I glanced up my phone when I woke up in the morning, and I think I have a Google alert on a Tidy Armageddon, and it was like, oh yeah, here we go. And it was always junk every time. And then it was like, oh, this is interesting. And, start to scroll, and then you realize that it's real. And yeah, I had no idea. I had no idea about that. And it was a very interesting list. And I'm really keen actually to look up some of those other books that were on that list. They were all international. It wasn't just a Canadian list. So, yeah, I was very, very pleased to see that as well. And it was completely out of the blue and unexpected. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I agree. It is a really eclectic group of other ones in there as well. And yeah, I was surprised to see that you were the only Canadian book and then Toronto Star list. But yeah, amongst good company, I guess.
Yes, yes. No, it was exciting to encounter that. Yeah. Yeah. So what, what if you want to talk about real hope that I have, of course, every author wants their work to be, made into a TV series or a, movie or something like that. I actually have one reason that I hope for that is the thing that we were talking about was about how the density of the objects required a lot of words, when you were to describe. And this is, I think, an example of where a different medium can tell the story in a different way that can have equal or even maybe even greater impact. Because for me, to describe, one of these towers of all these products takes quite a few words to really have the impact. But if you were to see it on the screen, it would be instantaneous. You'd have that stack of blenders that would appear. And I feel like there's a bit of a greater efficiency there in being able to tell that story. And in a way, I'd love, to have that, whatever CGI that they would use to generate that kind of scenery, I think would be astonishing to look at. And the impact in that way would, I think it would be even greater than reading the words on the page.
Have you tried using AI to get those images?
I have a little bit. I did use Midjourney a bit. I spent a bit of time. It was very difficult to communicate in the limited, vocabulary and everything that it would understand. I read a lot of guides and stuff like that, and I had a really hard time trying to get it to actually generate those things. It would invariably would make them look sort of like individual art projects or something. They'd be in the middle of the prairie, but there'd be a lot of space between them. It was hard to convey that there were these, it was like a maze and that there were these passageways in between. I don't know. It's the art of the prompt ultimately is what AI is about, being able to, create those sentences. I guess I'm just not very, very good at it at this point, but it was a fun exercise to try to create things. I never got an image that I was really happy with.
So we talked to a number of authors, and a surprising number of the authors that we have chatted with have a software development background, including Martha Wells, Dennis E. Taylor. But you also have a software development background. Is that right?
Yeah, I didn't know that about Martha Wells. That's cool. That's cool to know. Yeah, for me, I say that I've always been blessed and cursed with a kind of a technical skill. My father worked for IBM, and when I was 16 years old, he gave me a bag of parts that was actually everything to build an Apple II computer at the time. And I used a soldering iron, and I soldered all the parts onto the board and got this thing to work. And so I've never really taken any technical training, but I've always had kind of a technical skill, and I've done tech support and that kind of thing. Yeah, so there's actually a tie-in with a Tie Armageddon, because there were so many products that became necessary for me to develop a database of all of them to not only make sure that I didn't reuse things, to check things off of a list, but I would have it. I had a version on my phone, so if I was in an antique shop or something and I spotted a product that I thought would be cool, to put into a stack 90 feet tall, I would be able to whip out my phone and record it immediately into the database, because it's how you forget that kind of thing later, unless you get it down right away. So and that database also helped me in that I was able to input it. It had a calculator in it where I could input the volume, how many fluorescent tubes were produced, and here's the dimensions of a fluorescent tube, and so how big is that block going to be and I'd have to estimate, many fluorescent tubes have been smashed and are gone and everything like that, and this software would turn out a number to give me an idea of like, okay, so if we're going to walk for 1,500 meters, like, what's that dimension like? And then if you go around the corner, how far are you going to walk for the other dimension of that square? So that ended up being very handy to have that skill. I find that being able to kind of write software is a bit of a superpower, because you can create these tools out of nothing that can be very helpful. So yeah, my job has been, I've been a freelance FileMaker Pro developer for the past 12 years or so. I've been using the product forever, but just being freelance. And that's what PubGizmo is, which is this program which was originally created for the Coach House Press, which is a very venerable and respected small press in Toronto. They have 2 Giller prizes under their belt. I wrote the software for them, and then the editor there, the publisher and editor there, said that it would be really helpful for other presses to have this, and because doing royalties is actually a very arduous process. And so we are now have subscribers for this product, and that earns me a bit of a living as well and gives me time to write the other half of the day.
That's really interesting, because I think you're the first author that we've chatted with who's used the software development as part of the writing process. Others have talked about the having that knowledge to help them when they're writing prose, but you actually were able to use it to build the
Yes.
database, to make it more accurate, and it's such a fascinating thing. You had that superpower to be able to make your book better,
Right.
which is pretty cool.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think there are 404 products. I looked at the database the other day that actually get mentioned in the book. Out of a very long list, like those are the ones that I use. There's still like hundreds more. If I ever write a sequel or something like that, I got a large pool. There's a lot of stuff. So I'm not worried about running out of anything.
You could use SQL for your sequel.
Right.
Sorry, that was a really bad software development joke.
It was low-hanging fruit.
All right.
Gotta ask though, is there a sequel? Because there are many unanswered questions at the end of this book.
Okay, so that's a good question, because when I was writing the book, I always asserted to myself that there was never going to be a sequel. I was going to just write a single book, and there was in a period of about an hour one day, completely involuntarily, all of these ideas came to me to actually explain what happened in the book, because it's quite ambiguous, and I didn't call on this information to come to me. It just seemed to, take on a life of its own and generate various ideas. And immediately I just took them down and, didn't look at them again for a few years and finished the novel. And in fact, there is information there that, given enough, time and effort, could be turned into a sequel and provide sort of a rational explanation for what's going on here, even though that was never my plan. So I haven't actually embarked on it yet, but it's something there that that is waiting for me when I'm ready to approach it again. I found that the real experience with this first book was that it was just there. It had to be ready. I had to be ready to write that. And so I think it's the same with this. I'm not at that point right now, but there is some fodder to generate that in the future. Oh, maybe all your questions will be answered.
Mm-hmm. Involving aliens?
Who knows?
Well,
It seems like the most reasonable explanation, I think, is aliens, I would say.
Mm-hmm. I do wonder aliens existing, what they actually think about the way we do things, and if they're just ashamed of us and seeing the consumerism and saying, does it remind them of them from a million years ago? Or are they going, what's with this species? This is a really weird one. Or if we are a reflection of them, it's an interesting concept that I'm kind of left with.
Yeah. If we're just kind of the ridiculous youth that they say, oh, remember that period when we were like that, when we were generating all this stuff and made a mess of our home world, and so rich, just so many ideas.
Yeah. I did want to ask, because you've got right behind you've got a couple of guitar cases.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I don't know if I annoy listeners or even Kevin and other guys. I always like to talk about music with guests. Is that annoying, Kevin?
It's not too annoying. It's not too annoying.
I heard some of your conversations. I heard your one with John Scalzi, and that was great to hear. I know he's has some music. I think you can listen to it on iTunes or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
he'll be DJing at Glasgow 2024 too. He always does
Is he?
he does a dance party where he DJs.
Oh, that's
He's a
cool.
big music guy, but
Cool.
and then Peter Watts, he's a big he's actually not too far from you
Oh, is
in
he? Yeah,
proximity, yeah.
yeah,
But
yeah.
he loves his Jethro Tull and King Crimson and stuff. But it's fun to talk about. So yeah, what do you play and what do you like?
Well, the last few years, I've been taking piano lessons. Actually, I had took them when I was a kid, and of course, got sick of them and everything like that. And then my own kids started to take piano around the corner from us, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to pick it up again. So I'm in grade 7, Royal Conservatory of Music. I go to a lesson every week, and I really like to play Baroque music for some reason. I love kind of the structure of Bach and Telemann and Handel and stuff like that. So yeah, I do that. The big revolution for me in terms of piano is an electronic piano and headphones, because I hated practicing the piano. If you had lived in a house with a piano and you were learning piano, everybody had to hear you, when you were practicing. So I was never into that. So headphones have been just the greatest thing for me. You can practice the same annoying phrase, for 20 minutes and no one's going to scream at you or throw a frying pan at you. So I've been doing that, but I do play guitar. I have been playing since I was a teen. Never really formally, just messing around. And of course, with the technology, it's really fun. That what you can do. At one point, I had a 4-track recorder, a tape recorder, a little Tascam thing or something like that. But now, what you can do with even just with GarageBand, a free tool, is just astonishing. I'm in awe of what the possibility is, and yet I feel like I don't have the skill. I have the passion, but I don't have the skill, and I don't have the time really to pursue that kind of thing. But it is something that I love to do. I think in one of my other bios, I say that I'm a passionate but incompetent musician. So I'm not really that great, but I do have a lot of joy. It does give me a lot of joy.
Sounds like a lot of us, really.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, off camera, I even have this. I have an electronic drum kit as well, which drives my partner crazy because are we going to move it to Vancouver or aren't we? It folds up to be quite small, so that's my argument anyway. I'm hoping it'll come.
For our listeners, do you have any recommendations on any films, television shows, or books even that you have read that you think that we and the listeners should know about?
I'm in a book club and we're always reading. So we just read Recursion by Blake Crouch. I don't know if you know who that is.
Did he write
Dark Matter?
Dark Matter?
Yes,
Yep.
yes, yeah. So yeah, it's a bit of a Groundhog Day kind of thing, but with memory. I would say it's like Groundhog, where everybody remembers all the different pasts that happen to the characters when they go back into the loop. It's pretty compelling. It's very strong story to it. It's not too repetitious, to drive you crazy, and it's pretty exciting. So that's one that we're doing in our book club. We haven't met about it yet, so it's just there at the top of my mind of the last thing I read. So I think that's worth a go. That's pretty good. In terms of, I haven't seen the new Dune film yet, but of course everybody's seen that or going to see that. I did enjoy the first one. I love Denis Villeneuve as a director. And what else? I don't know. I don't know what So there's a bunch of series that I still want to watch. I want to watch Silo. I know. I think you guys were talking about another one, which is The Expanse,
Mhm.
which I haven't seen yet, and I haven't read the books.
Our next episode is going to be about The Expanse.
Oh,
actually.
okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tune in about that one.
Mhm.
Although no spoilers because I don't really know it yet.
No, we'll be careful.
Okay. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah. I don't know. There's so much media to consume. It's. I'm like right now. I'm watching because I love Band of Brothers. I'm watching, and because I've been very interested in aviation as well as Masters of the Air, which is by the same guys who did Bands of Brothers, Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks, and that kind of thing. And one of my novels was about aviation. It was about a DC-3, Douglas DC-3, very famous aircraft. as well. So, and I took pilot lessons for a while. I never actually got my license, but I did fly out of Toronto Island Airport solo. I've flown an airplane by myself, which is a weird thing. I soloed and I flew to Peterborough and to like near Huntsville, I guess, up in Muskoka, by myself in an airplane quite a few years ago before I ran out of money and didn't actually get my license, and realized that even if I got my license, I wouldn't really have very many opportunities to fly. I think my brother did actually get his license, and he flew 2 times after that. So
Seems like one of those things that's really good in principle, but in practice, it's a bit more tricky, right?
yeah, exactly. Planes are expensive, aviation fuel is expensive, and even a little dangerous. So
Right.
it's something to consider.
Is there anything you'd like to talk about, Brian, that we didn't cover? Any questions or anything you want to?
I don't think so. I think this is good. I mean, we've gone pretty deep into the book, and I haven't really had a discussion like this about it, which is really nice. It's great to talk to people who have read it. And I just love the idea that it can have an influence on behavior, and that it gets people at the very least to think about their consumerism and maybe make different decisions, as we have so many hard decisions to make as a society, which I'm fairly pessimistic that we're going to make the right choices going forward. So I guess we all just do our little part, and as writers, you write to entertain, but you also hope to write to change people's minds in a way, and to alter the behavior where that behavior is harmful. So in a way, I appreciate that. I liked the answers to that question that you guys gave, that it has, put you into a different place when you're thinking about buying things. So I feel I'm really glad to have talked about that.
Yeah, I'm always struggling to find where I stand with that stuff. So this book does, it finds a lane and it goes, try this one. So congrats on that, and well, congratulations on the book in general. It's been, from what I can tell, very well received overall, and I really enjoyed it, and I think that many other people will as well. And for our listeners, definitely check out the show notes, because there's going to be a link to Brian's website, and grab a copy of this book and check it out. And stop buying stuff. Stop.
Well,
don't buy bottles of Nestle water or Kit Kats. That's right. We don't want Kit Kats anymore.
I really like Kit Kats.
Is there another? There's got to be another company or something that makes a Kit Kat like chocolate bar.
Actually, there is Leclerc makes a coffee crisp type thing. So, which is
there you go.
So you can buy them in a big box too. You're not just getting a little wrapped up candy bar. It's in a large carton. So I guess the total waste is lower. So you can go there as well. So there's my tip.
Yeah. No, I find you very inspirational, Brian. Thank you. And the book is optimistic, as much as you think post-apocalyptic isn't optimistic. The book, I say, is.
Oh, thank you. I just want to say thank you so much for having me on your show. It's a great honor. I have been listening to the show, and you have great guests on it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brian.
Yeah, Brian, that was excellent.
Okay.
I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Brian, for joining us today. That was awesome. We really appreciate you. Listeners, we hope you enjoyed that one. Check out the show notes for a link to Brian's website. Until next time.